All right. Anybody else not excited to get back to reality on Monday? Does this kind of feel like not reality? Yeah, me too. I'm lucky enough that I get to basically ignore my work life for a few days. So not everybody is. So thankfully, I have an amazing boss that lets me do that. All right. So let's get started. I've noticed in my technical days that a lot of people don't have any background in sales like I did. I did alarm sales for a couple years for ADT, and I learned a lot of things about humans and interacting with them and getting them to trust you. If they trust you, they'll buy stuff from you. It's kind of sad and good at the same time if you have honest intentions. But I think that's helped me a lot in my IT career, dealing with executives and bosses and owners of companies, whether I've done some IT consulting in the past. I noticed a lot of my IT consulting coworkers had issues getting people to secure their networks because they didn't know how to talk to people about it. So that's mostly what this talk's going to be about, as well as a little bit of my experience implementing specific things that are kind of some basic CIS controls kind of thing. If you haven't looked at that document, you probably should. So here's a little bit about me. My wife and I moved to Utah in 2008, so it's, I guess, a little over 10 years now. I have way too many hobbies, and most of them are expensive. So kind of got to pick one, unfortunately, and that's tough to do sometimes. I love photography. I just got to go to Yellowstone a couple weeks ago. If you haven't been, it's amazing. It's worth it. It's expensive, but it's worth it. I've been in tech for over 20 years, off and on, different roles, troubleshooting, internet tech support, everything you can think of. I've been a sysadmin, technically. I guess that's kind of the role that most people would notice it as. It's kind of all a jack of all trades. If you work at a smaller company, you know what I mean? You get to be, security engineer, you get to be network engineer, you get to be, Microsoft Office 365 engineer, AWS, everything. So you get to learn a lot, but it's exhausting sometimes. I'm a big proponent of privacy and the EFF, as I'm assuming most people in this room would be. I would expect. That's been my experience anyways. So I love supporting them. I love supporting privacy organizations and companies like Proton Mail and others. So another big love of mine and my wife's, probably more my wife's than mine, but is fostering animals. And if anybody likes cute kittens, I guess you're in luck here. Oh, sorry, I forgot to put this first. So another love of mine is helping people. I found Operation Safe Escape a few years ago. There's a great group of people that love helping people and victims in need. A lot of people entangle their devices when they're in a relationship, whether that's actually married or not, and they've been living together. As many of you know, if you have somebody's Apple ID or access to their phone, you can pretty much track them anywhere they go, as well as see their text messages and everything. If you're in an abusive relationship, that becomes a problem really fast. And a lot of people don't know where to go. I've helped quite a few victims, just basic stuff. You don't need to be some elite hacker and know Kali Linux and stuff to help these people. You just need to know where the settings are at in, say, an Apple ID to set up two-factor authentication and basically kick all the old devices off there. I mean, it's simple stuff like that these people need help with. So if you do have some extra time and you're looking to volunteer, they are a great organization, and I absolutely love working with them. They're also, for those interested, they're also working on it. I don't have a ton of details on it yet. It's kind of new. They're working with a couple of different organizations, including some federal law enforcement, on child sexual abuse material and hunting those people down. They've got some people that have had experience with that before, and like I said, they've got some great relationships with some law enforcement people. I don't know if it's FBI or who exactly it was. I think it might be. I can't remember. Like I said, it's been a while since they talked about it, and they're still kind of spinning it up. But that's kind of an active threat hunting kind of thing. If you're interested in that, I think they're two different kind of things, even if you're not interested in helping people secure their accounts. I think a lot of people here would probably be interested in that, so I wanted to put it out there. Reach out to I'm on Twitter. That's where I end up finding them. So there's a great group of people there that all love helping people and making the world a better place. So, all right, on to the kittens. This is Osborne. Sad story. He was found with all his siblings who were dead. So we got him. Now he has new siblings. We got him two new friends, and now they're one big happy family. So we're raising them. Best Friends Animal Society is a great organization if you want to help animals. So my wife does most of the work, but I help out. So, but she loves raising these little guys. We've had like, I don't know, I lost count now, 70, 80 animals over the last couple years. It's tough to give them up. So if you get attached, fostering might not be a job for you because you'll end up with a house of like 15 animals. So, all right. This is kind of what I'm going to go over. Getting leadership buy-in, soft skills like I spoke about, sales skills technically. You're selling your company on why they need to do this, whether you're a consultant or you're an employee of the company. It's your job to make them understand why they need it. And I know I would guess that just about everybody in this room struggles with getting people to spend the proper amount of money on security. I mean, that's every security conference I go to, that seems like its underlying, theme is that we don't have enough money. I listened to the CISO talk the other day, and that's the reason CISOs are leaving. They get in there and they want them to do this, this, and this, and this, but this costs $1 million, and you have 50 grand. Figure it out. And they figure out it's not very much fun. and then you get scapegoated when there's a breach. So along with that sales communication, finding a core test group of employees, of coworkers, of friends, even they're your friends. I've got a couple friends that of users at my company that if I need to test something, they're the guinea pigs, because I know they're not going to get really that mad at me if it goes wrong. And then back to a couple basic CIS tenants, and securities, inventory, and patch management, including system upgrades and stuff too. So, all right. All right, as most of you know, if you don't have leadership buy-in, you're probably not going to get funding, and you're probably going to have a rough time. I've experienced this. You can do it without it, as you're not as successful, and it's a lot more frustrating, but sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to do that, especially at a smaller company. If you're a one-man shop or a two-man shop or whatever, if you've only got a couple people in there, it's going to be tough to justify 100 grand for cybersecurity. But the reason you need this is you have to have policies in place, and there has to be consequences for breaking those policies for your fellow coworkers, or they're not going to listen to you. I've dealt with this, and I'm thankfully in a place now where I'm getting more leadership buy-in, and it's a whole lot easier. It's almost, I would almost venture to say it's impossible to do it well without it, because if you tell somebody they need to update their computer and they don't have to listen to you, what are you going to do? I mean, granted, you can install things that you can force them to update and push them to update, but when that happens and you brick their machine and they run to the boss and say, and that boss is not on board with you doing that, you're going to have a bad time. I thankfully have not had that happen yet, but I can imagine. And so, and I think a lot of Snow and Jason talked about too is that you need to have policies in place so those users know what they're expected to do. If they don't know who to call when there's a problem, when they click on a phishing email, or what they're supposed to do, that's on you. Like, you need to tell them what they need to do. It needs to be in writing, it needs to be communicated, it needs to be easily found, and not just in an email. We all know how often people read emails. I don't know about if anybody else has more success, but I don't seem to have very much success getting people to read and respond to emails very often, especially when you send them out to the whole company. So Having that stuff in writing, having a place to refer back to, obviously training and going over is important, but having a reference so they can find it. And if you do training and somebody clicks on a link or gets a phone call in 18 months from now, are they going to remember that stuff? Probably not. If they have a place that they can refer back, if they can pull up a web page, a wiki, anything like that, and go, hey, I remember that there's a place I can find this stuff, what I'm supposed to do. And there's a number that I'm going to call, or there's an email that I need to send it to, whether you need to set up a distribution group for you to send spam emails to, or a breach email if I think I downloaded a virus, whatever it is. Have a place for these people to communicate to, and let them know, reiterate it what they're supposed to do, because they're not going to remember, especially when they're stressed out. If they think they clicked on a link, they've infected their computer or their network, they're stressed out. And the reason, like I said, the reason I wanted to go over sales is because you need to sell leadership on this most of the time. If they don't have this, if they haven't budgeted this, and they don't have it budgeted now, and they haven't had a breach, they don't think they need it. And so you need to convince them that they do need it, and that they need it before they get a breach and not after. It's kind of like the old adage, the horses are already out of the barn. If they already had a breach, now that's not the time to spend money on cybersecurity, as we all know. Like I said, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but I think more people need to realize that their bosses need to be explained why they need to care about this stuff. You need to show them what happens. Those numbers that Snow put up, the average cost and spend of a single breach, of a data breach, is in the millions, and suddenly your 20 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand doesn't seem like very much. All right, soft skills. I know it's fun to talk about hard skills and technical skills, and we all love geeking out, but if you're in a smaller company and you're not in a leadership position, and like I said, you're a one-person shop, two-person shop, you need to know how to talk to people. You need to know how to convince people that what you're saying is truthful and that they need to trust you. And there's some skills that come into that, and like I said, it comes into sales, basically. You're selling them on why they should believe you. This is a big one that I've had to work on over the last 10 years or so. I worked at Apple for a couple years at the Genius Bar, and it's a tough job, especially for what you get paid for it. But I did learn a lot. Apple does a great job on their training and their training their leadership on how to train their employees and how to talk to people. The one thing that I learned there is that perception is reality. If somebody thinks you're not approachable, you are not approachable, and there's a reason for that. One of the examples is that when I would get a customer's device, and we had 10-minute appointment times for iOS devices and 15-minute appointment times for MacBooks or Macs in general. And that's not a lot of time. So my perception going in there was, I'm going to get right to work on this person's device. I'm going to start pulling the serial number and start typing their paperwork as they're talking, as they're giving me their information. The problem with that is that customer oftentimes perceives that as you don't care. You don't care about their problem. You don't care that their phone's broke. You don't care that they've lost data on their pictures, even though you do. So it doesn't matter if you actually care. If they perceive you not to care, then that's all that matters. So I learned at that job, and it's crazy how well it works. It seems really simple. Now when somebody comes into my office and needs help, even though they haven't put in a ticket, I will stop what I'm doing. I will, depending on where they sit or stand, I will close my computer. I will give them eye contact. I will give them my attention. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not looking at my watch. I'm giving them my attention because they've come into my office for help. I'm getting paid to help them. And that's what I tell people a lot of times, because a lot of times people think that they're bugging the IT person or the security person, that you've got better things to do than deal with their issue. And that what that leads to is them not reporting stuff. They're not going to bother you. Oh, well, I clicked on a link, but I don't think it did anything, so I'm not going to bother them. So, and that's what it leads to. And I've had, like I said, I had to consciously work on this. It's not, for most of us, it does not come second nature. I would guess that most people in here, minus some sales engineers that are actually in that role to do selling, are not used to, selling people and really talking to people and really comfortable with it. I'm what's called an introvert extrovert. Troy actually told me this last year, and so I can fake it really well, but for the most part, I'm an introvert, so. And like I said, multitasking. Even though you think you're being helpful, you're working on things and you're still listening to them, they don't see it that way. They think you're too busy for them, and you don't care about their issue, no matter how small it is. And you caring about their smaller issues, especially if it doesn't seem that big. Maybe you don't understand why it's a big deal to them. Maybe they didn't explain that they have a project due in an hour, and they just need to fix this problem with PowerPoint. A lot of times they don't. But if you just take every problem seriously as they come in there, then when there is a serious problem, they're going to come to you. And I like I said, I've noticed that firsthand. I have people come to me right after they click on a link and say, hey, I think this email is a scam email, and I clicked on it, and I typed this password in. And so, I was able to fix it right away. I was able to take the machine and wipe it and mitigate it and then take it off the network immediately. Not a week from then, when they're like, hey, my machine's acting weird, and I clicked on this link a week ago. And so that trust that you're not going to get upset, that's another thing too. You can't get upset with them. You can't roll your eyes. You can't, all these little things that people pick up on, this body language and this nonverbal communication. You have to be conscious of that. And sometimes it even takes working at it in the mirror. Like you see people rehearsing their speeches in a mirror for a reason, because your face portrays your emotions. Most people's anyways, unless you're a sociopath, I guess. But most people's faces portray their emotions. So if you're annoyed, if you're frustrated, even though some of us get that way, you have to at least try to hide it, and because that's how people trust you. They trust that you're not going to get mad at them, you're not going to get upset with them. If somebody keeps clicking on links and keeps opening up emails, depending on our organization, I would guess that most of the time, that's not your job to get upset with them. That's their managers, that's their bosses, that's the owner of the company, whatever it is. You shouldn't get to be the bad guy. You shouldn't have to be the bad guy. You should be the person that everybody can come to when they have an issue. Like I said, if they keep doing it, then that's a problem. But you don't. I personally don't want to be the bad guy. I think it's easier to do your job when people don't hate you. So hence the reason this talk. So there's tons of good books on these topics. The one that always stands out to me, that it sounds really cliche, the one that really changed my life and changed how I deal with people, is very popular. A lot of people have read it. A lot of people haven't. How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a ton of good information in there. I didn't even finish the whole thing. I had an old boss that said, especially with books like that, they're like self-help books and such. If you read it, usually when you read a book like that, you get 1, 2, 3 pieces of key information that really ring true to you, that really you're like, wow, I really need to do that. That's a great idea. If you read halfway through that book and you get those already, move on. Sometimes there's more information in there. If you still want to read it, that's fine. But I don't even remember what happened in my life at the time. I got about halfway through that book, and I got several good pieces of information. So I didn't want to force myself to go back to that book, even I'm a big book nerd, so I love reading books. But like I said, even if you just read some of the highlights of that book, there's some great stories in there. There's some great advice on how to deal with people, and it seems simple. But it is that simple. Humans are, for the most part, are pretty simple creatures, and communication and talking, and it seems intuitive at first until you read it, and you're like, wow, okay, that's really not really that simple. So, I think I've got over this a little bit. Sales. Back to the How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's when I read that book. Is when I was doing sales. People like to talk about themselves, get to know people, what their hobbies are into. Don't discount that. Don't spend a half an hour talking to somebody about cars or about photography. Your boss is probably not going to appreciate that on both your ends. But don't discount. Spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to somebody not about work. It has value. Those relationships have value, especially now that a lot of us are working from home or not working in the office. You have to work at it more to get to know people. And when people know you, they trust you. Like I said, I know I've got a few friends at my office that even even if something was going wrong that nobody else wanted to tell me, I know they would come to me and let me know, and that has value. So don't discount that. Same thing with your bosses. If they trust you, and and they trust what you're saying is true, and they like you, they're more apt to take your suggestions and implement things and give you money to spend on things. So, and this is all what sales is. If you've ever done any sales at all, like I said, the customer has to like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to trust you when you tell them, hey, you need to spend extra on this, or you need to buy this. This is a great product. You need to buy it. If they don't like you, they're not going to trust you, and they're not going to take your word for anything. So, one of the great things that Apple does with their salespeople is their training process and how to talk to customers, how to sell customers on their devices. If you ever get a chance, go. Even if you don't want to buy an Apple device, I know that's a polarizing topic in this group. Either go and observe how they talk to customers, or even just go and act like you're a non-technical customer. They're not going to tell you that this device has 32 gigs of RAM. They're going to explain what benefits you get from having a device that has 32 gigs of RAM. They're not going to tell you any technical details unless you ask. I'm sure if they ask, they probably will. If you're a technical person and you don't want 16, you want 32 or whatever it is, they'll tell you. They know that stuff, obviously, selling those devices, but most people don't care. Your boss doesn't care for the most part, unless they're a technical person. For the most part, they don't care. What features of your endpoint security keep you safe, or what features Office 365 has when you buy an E1 license versus a regular business standard license. All the security features you have. They don't care about that stuff. They don't care about the technical details. They care about what it does for them and the company, and what it does for users and the features, the benefits, not the features, basically. So that's how you need to explain stuff to them. They don't care that this endpoint is great against ransomware protection and the exact details and how it does it. You're going to watch them glaze over faster than anything, and you're going to lose them. And so that's why you need to explain, hey, if we get a breach, it's going to cost us this much money. And that's exactly how I had a client that didn't want to spend money on an antivirus. At the time, I was working for an IT consultancy, and the main product that we used was Sophos. And I think at the time, with their ransomware protection, it was like $7 or $8 an endpoint. And they were a smaller business. They wouldn't have the 10, 15 endpoints, something like that. And they didn't want to spend that money. It would have been a couple $100, $100 a month or something like that. And I explained it to him, and I said, hey, if you get a ransomware breach or any other data breach, for me to clean that up and be sure that it's gone, be sure that they're not in systems, you're at least 10 to 15 hours of my time at over $100 an hour. That's assuming you have no data loss, you have to recreate no work, which is almost impossible. That's assuming you have no downtime. You have downtime, you're paying your employees now, and they have no connection. They can't work. Like I said, just my time is like I said, $100 an hour at 10 to 15 hours, if not more. Like, that's just a conservative estimate. And that sold him. He was like, yep, you're right. Let's pay for it. So that's the way you have to break this stuff down. You have to let them know. It's tough for bosses to visualize that stuff, because a lot of people, and this is a risk management thing, they think this is never going to happen to me until it does. That's the problem. That's the problem with a lot of this stuff, is that they don't see this happening. Oh, we're not a target. We're not a defense contractor. We're not the FBI. We don't have anything super top secret. But you have competitors, and you have actors out there that just want money. They don't care who you are, especially now that we're in the ransomware age. 20 or 30 years ago, when ransomware was not a big thing, there was a smaller business probably didn't have any risk of getting targeted. It was probably really, really low, and that's understandable. But you have actors now that don't care who you are. They don't care that you're just a mom and pop with a couple $100,000 in revenue. They're still going to get money out of you when you lock your files up. So that's what people need to realize. They need, and then maybe you need to put it like that. Maybe you need to talk to them about exactly. Obviously, being an IT person, you're going to know which files are valuable. Hey, what happens if this server was offline? You couldn't access your QuickBooks. What would happen? How much of a problem would that be? And then they get to thinking, well, I use QuickBooks like 6 times a day, and that's just me. I'm not even the accountant. If we didn't have all that numbers and stuff, we had to recreate all that data. That would take weeks. And then not to mention the time you lost work in that time too. That's where you get those wheels turning about what actually happened, what the actual cost of a breach is going to be. Communication. I know that a lot of speakers have spoke about it. I noticed a lot in like I said, a couple of the keynotes. Give people actionable facts when you're sending emails out, what you want them to do. Don't make it vague. Explain to them, hey, this needs to be done by this date, or whatever it is. You need to have actual facts in there, what you need them to do. We need you to update your computer. We need you to do this. We need you to do that. Don't make it vague. It needs to be very laid out. And if you have to, if you're not used to speaking to non-technical people, have a good friend that's not technical review it. Say, hey, do you understand this? Send it to them first. Have them review it. Do you understand this? Does this make sense? Do you have any questions? Because I think a lot of us realize is that we have a lot of this knowledge and we just assume things a lot of times, and you can't do that. This is one thing my boss taught me here. He actually worked in the Defense Department for, I think, of defense contractors, and they had a limit on how many emails they could send out, basically, from their bosses. Because the more emails you send out, hey, this new update came out, this thing came out, the more people are going to ignore them. You have to pick and choose what's important to email about, to communicate about. The more you send out, the more people are going to start, like I said, just another email from IT, just another update. So you have to be careful about that. I've been guilty of that, especially we have a lot of Macs at the shop. Anybody that has Macs and operates them and controls them knows the amount of breaches that have happened over the last couple, or not breaches, security issues that they've had over the last couple of years. Some of the remote code execution bugs that I've had out that have been being actively exploited. The amount that have happened for iOS and for Mac OS over the last couple of years has been much, much higher than in the past from what I've seen anyway. So you have to be careful about, being Chicken Little when the sky's not really falling kind of thing. So you have to balance that. Talked about this earlier. Not just your friends, a couple of the people that are less technical users. Have a group of people that you can roll things out to first and test it. You can have a really bad time if you click the wrong box and you send something out incorrectly. I experienced this with our MDM. I was trying to push a password policy out to our computers, and I did not test this as real world as I was going to use it when I actually pushed it out for real. And it thankfully only pushed it out to a few users, but it did cause some problems. I found out after I pushed the password policy out that my plan was to create the policy and push it out to 5 or 10 users, and then add 5 or 10 users to that, and then in another week or so, after they change their passwords, add a few more users, and roll it out slowly over time. The problem was the documentation for our MDM did not make it clear that every time you made a change to that password policy, it pushed the whole thing out to all the devices again. So if there's a forced reset in there, and you add devices 2 or 3 times, and you hit save 2 or 3 times, all those devices get to reset their password multiple times, and that queues them up. So you change your password, you lock your machine, go log back in again, you get to change your password again. So needless to say, the few users that I got sent to were not very happy with me. If I had pushed it out to the whole company, including the owners of the company, I probably would have been a whole lot worse. As it was, I only ended up having to wipe one machine because I didn't have encryption keys saved for that MacBook in Sophos, so that I could, when this user changed their password for the 2nd or 3rd time, and they typed it in incorrect and must have bumped the wrong key and locked themselves out. So wiping one machine and wiping 20 and 30 machines and trying to recover data from them is a whole lot better. So learn from my mistakes, learn from others' mistakes, and test things as real world as possible, exactly how you're going to use them, as much as possible. If you can have a test bench, that's even better. Something that you can easily blow away and you can wipe if you had to if you screw it up. And like I said, test it on users that aren't going to get too mad at you if you really screw their computer up. Ones that you know that they have their data backed up, or it's on Dropbox or Box or OneDrive or whatever, so that if you do screw their computer up, it's not going to be that big of a deal. This is kind of getting into the CIS stuff. Troy did a talk of this a couple years ago. This is where I first found this. Like I said, I'm a little new to InfoSec in general. It seems really basic. Inventory, password policies, hardening. But a lot of teams, I've seen people that I've known that have been more experienced that aren't doing this stuff. And I know a lot. It seems like I said, the keynotes. I know Jason preached on this. If you don't know what devices are on your network, you have a problem. You need to do that. It's a basic thing that a lot of people are not doing. We're not doing that, and I'm working on it right now. It's tougher than you think, especially if you don't have leadership buy-in. If people are buying machines that aren't going through IT, and they have, there's how many people in your organization have credit cards, and they need something, they just go and buy it. That's a problem. Unless you have controls set up where they can't put that device in the network until it goes through you. That's another thing we're working on too. If anybody can just put any device on the network, if they know the password, you're in for a bad time. I had to find out the hard way that just allowing people to plug in devices into the network, into the hardware or wireless, somebody's going to bring a router in and turn on a DHCP server and start handing out IP addresses. So that was the day that I turned on port security. So you don't think you need it until you need it. Did I lose this? Everybody hear me? Oh, maybe it was just a little louder before. Okay. All right. So same with software inventory. When this is something we didn't have any put in place. When Log4j came out, I had no clue if we had anything running that. None. I had to go and start asking our developers. I was like, hey, do we have anything that runs this? They didn't know. That's a problem. When you can be on top of this stuff as much as you want, and right when that stuff comes out and know exactly how to fix it, but if you don't know if you're running that or where all those machines are at, you're going to have a problem. That's what happened with Equifax. I don't know if anybody is aware of exactly what happened. They missed the machine. I believe it was an Apache bug. I can't remember exactly the details, but I know a company that size didn't have controls in place to make sure that they had everything patched. They missed the machine, and a hacker is going to, excuse me, I don't want to use that word. A bad actor is going to make you pay for that. All they need is one time. All they need to do is miss one. You don't need 50 machines that are vulnerable. You just need one, and that's all they need. And they found it. And so you have to have an inventory of this stuff and know exactly what's been patched and what you have, what you're running, what software you're running. So, in order to keep your network secure. I guess I kind of jumped ahead of myself a little bit here. So, yeah, like this is something we're getting under control. That, like I said, I've been at the company now 3 years now, and all of a sudden people would just show up with a new device, and I was like, "Where'd you get that?" "Oh, my boss bought it for me." "Okay, can I have it?" And I need to put endpoint security on it. I need to put patch management. I need to record it in inventory. And a lot of times that I wouldn't even see it. A lot of times devices would just show up on the network, and I was like, "Okay, who's got a new MacBook?" So everything has to run through some point of contact in IT, so you know what's on your network. Or you have to have security controls, or better, you have to have security controls that doesn't even allow them to have access to anything unless they go through you. It has to be added, and that's tough to do sometimes. It's a whole lot easier to just spin up a wireless network and put a password on it and give it out to everybody. So a lot of businesses do, unfortunately. That's what ours did for the longest time. Ours had the same password on the Wi-Fi for 10 plus years over a building move. And I'm sure that there was, in that 10 plus years, there was nobody that was fired or let go and was disgruntled at all. They would still have that Wi-Fi password. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people times think of inventory as just hardware inventory. But like I said, it's software too. Along with this, this is another way you can push this too. There's another way you can get money for just spending on patch management and asset inventory is that we had a problem with people needing an Office 365 license, and they didn't know where to get it. So they just whip out their company credit card and sign up. And then 3 or 4 years later, when we've got the company, they got a company license, they're still getting charged for that. So how much that's happened at your company where people are just buying licenses? We found out that we had more Dropbox licenses at our company than we had employees, like by like 30 or 40%. And that gets expensive really fast. I found I don't remember what the name of it was like a online file server type program, kind of like Dropbox and OneDrive. It was about $600 or $700 a year that nobody had touched for like 2 or 3 years. And I've been finding stuff like that all the time. So when you have that stuff recorded and somebody's checking on that stuff, they know, like, hey, we stopped using that. We need to cancel that this year. When you have the ability to document that stuff and record it in a central place where somebody's watching it, you can save your company money. Like I said, if nobody's watching it and it's a free-for-all, I guarantee there's waste. My boss calculated over $100,000 that we're wasting in licenses that we're paying for that nobody's using or that we've got duplicates of. So the company I work for is not huge. $100,000 is a lot of freaking money. Depending on the size of your company, it could be or it could not be, but that's $100,000 that could be going towards IT and security. That was just wasted. They literally lit on fire. Figuratively, sorry, not literally. Figuratively lit on fire. So, yeah, it's all about finding the angle to get you to get money to spend on security, and if you can save them money, and it's not just an overhead expense, your CFO will love you for that. Patch management kind of comes back to software inventory a little bit. They kind of go hand in hand, I think, it's been in my experience anyways. If you don't know what you have or what software version it's running, then it's kind of tough to know if everything's up to date. I have users, I don't know I'm guessing everybody has this. Raise your hand if you have users that leave browsers open for weeks at a time and hundreds of tabs. And then when a problem happens, they lose their mind that you want them to completely close their browser. So that's the only way that browser updates. You leave it open, it's not going to update. The browsers, Chrome and Firefox and Brave, all are great about pushing automatic updates. But if they ignore that little update button in the top, it doesn't matter. If you don't close your browser, restart your computer, it's not going to update. So if you don't have any way to track what version of software that is on, and you have more than a few machines, there's no way you can do that manually. And I find that out too. Now that I have patch management in place, and I can see in a central location, the company that I use, I think it's Manage Engine, even flags severity of patches too. So that's less work for me. I don't have to go and track down which patches I need to do, which ones I don't need to do, which ones I need to prioritize. They give me a little colored box, and the red ones I do first. It seems simple once you have it in place. Along with this, especially the way new laptops are, people need to have backups, and I know like probably half my employees do not. If a patch pushes out wrong, it can screw a computer up, and you have to wipe it and reinstall. If you've got a backup, probably not a big deal. It's a minor inconvenience, an hour or two. If you don't have a backup, depending on the user, it's probably kind of a big deal. With like most modern laptops nowadays, you can't just pull a hard drive out of them, and pull the files off of them. That's not a thing, especially if you've got a MacBook. I think a lot of other manufacturers are going to that now too, where that drive and the SSD and stuff are soldered onto the board. That's becoming more and more of a thing. So that's a much bigger idea to back up. If you're going to push updates and make people restart their computers, you need to be CYAing and at least letting them know that I can't recover your data. If your computer crashes, if it doesn't power on, your data's gone. I don't think the company's going to spend 10 or 15 grand to set out to a data recovery place. Most, depending on the data, they're probably not. You're just going to be kind of out of luck. I guess I got ahead of myself again. Backups. And same thing with ransomware. I like people know that the only real strategy against ransomware, foolproof, is a backup and an offline backup. I've got a hard drive that I plug into the server. There's several backup programs now that will disconnect the hard drive after it's been backing up. That's the best way, as far as I'm concerned, to make a backup, so you don't have to actually manually unplug it all the time. If you're not testing your backups, at least pulling a file out of there, see if it can open. If you can test a full backup, a full restore of a server, that's great. Sometimes it's not plausible. Sometimes you don't have a whole test bench. You don't have another 10 grand to spend on replacement on duplicate servers to spin that backup back up. But just even opening that backup and pulling some files out of there and seeing if they open up, Word files, PowerPoint files, whatever it is, you can catch a corrupt backup like that a lot of times. I've had it happen where I open a file up and it just will not read, or it opens up and it's just garbled, basically. And you can do another full backup and check it again. If you're not testing them, just like a lot of these policies and stuff like that, if you're not testing them, you're not running through real world scenarios with your employees when they happen, what they need to do, you're not going to have the results you need when there's an actual emergency, when you actually need that backup. You need to have a policy in place, a schedule in place where you're testing this stuff regularly. Okay, I guess I'm a little early here. I'm guessing, obviously preaching to the choir a little bit in here. This is just the beginning. This talk was not supposed to be some comprehensive on how to secure a network. There's lots more stuff to do. There's lots more than just in that CIS. That CIS is kind of a basic start, basically. Even though it's kind of a comprehensive. Risk management is what we do all the time. Our building has clients that come in there all the time. I'm not even there half the time when they're there. At nighttime in different towers, we run events out of there and stuff like that. You have to control for users. You have to protect users from themselves. You have to assume that they're going to plug machines into your network, and you have to plan for that. You have to assume that somebody's going to bring a router in from outside, and because they didn't have good enough Wi-Fi in their office, and just plug it in. And your network has to be hardened against that. You can't just allow that. Is it a pain in the butt to have to turn port security on and off when somebody changes machines? Yeah, but it's more of a pain to try to hunt down a rogue DHCP server, or find out later that you had a rogue access point, and there was somebody from outside that they left open and got in your network. You get to pay one way or the other. One way is a whole lot less painful. Like I said, the CIS controls, it's crazy how well done they are, and going exactly over step by step exactly what you need to do. But you need to prioritize what's right for your company. Like I said, the port security was not a priority in our company until it was. And like I said, until somebody plugged in a router and I had users getting random IP addresses. So that got moved to the front of the list. So you need to assess your risk. If you don't have anybody coming into your office random clients plugging in random machines, that's probably not much of a priority. Asset manager is probably more of a priority. You have to worry about where your employees' machines and your users' machines are at, rather than people coming in from the outside. But if you've got the general public coming into your offices, and you've got ports out where the general public can access, and like I said, in our office we have clients that are needing internet access and stuff like that. So I have to have a plan in place to give them internet access that doesn't have access to our network. So everybody's company is going to be different. You have to, prioritize yours depending on your risk. So, and that's it. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. I haven't specifically, but that's I think of where that software inventory comes in. You have to automate that software inventory. I haven't got to that point, but I'm guessing there's got to be products that can alert you when a new piece of software has been installed. Depending on your situation, I'm still working on getting local admin removed from a lot of our computers. So, it's priorities at that point. So, like, the people at my company was the Wild West for so long that it's just going to be baby steps, getting that little, taking a little bit at a time, and making people realize that no, you probably don't need to just install whatever program you want whenever you want to. Like, I get it's easier, when you don't need to come find me when you need to install a program, but you probably don't really need that, for the most part. We can plan ahead. With a little bit of planning, we can plan ahead for that. So I think there's a mixture of solutions to that problem. Obviously, the software inventory is one of them, flagging stuff that you guys don't normally use, that are, like I said, products like TeamViewer, the people that are free for home use, and then they want to make you pay. They're thankfully not as aggressive about sending letters and wanting money back because you're using it. They just they just lock you out of it, basically. They find if they detect commercial use, they just kind of lock your account, kind of thing. So I think that's a mixture of things. I think to me, I think the solution is not letting users install whatever they want whenever they want it, and making requests. But if you're just a one-person shop, two-person shop, sometimes that's not always feasible. We have account executives going out to events at all hours of the day and night, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to get phone calls at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, needing a program installed right now. That doesn't sound like very much fun to me. So it's all a case-by-case basis and on what works for you. So cool. Anybody else? I can't see. Okay, I think that's it. Perfect. Thanks, guys.